Good morning. We're running a little late on all fronts this morning. So Michael is having computer issues with it. Again, I think we need to get a Give Send Go and start raising some money for Michael to get a new computer, because that thing keeps giving us all kinds of heck. And I'm not sure today if you have been following the our friend Sandra Trawick and the Save Oklahoma Farms and Ranches. There will be a number of people, we hope anyway, going to the state capitol today wearing red to help get our legislators on board with stopping the green agenda. And she had some specific things, and I might be able to pull those up, but let me see if I can pull those up because I'm waiting for two things. So I'm waiting for my co-host. That's one thing I'm waiting on. But then the other thing I'm waiting on is, the Senate and the House both start at 9 a.m. this morning. So Senator Bullard could not really do a 9 a.m. podcast because of the fact that he had to be on the floor at 9 a.m. and he takes his job very seriously. Good morning, Gloria. Nice to see you. Yes. And Michael, I think that's a good one, because we have this problem with him frequently. So I am waiting. Okay. Yay, it downloaded. Okay. So I have got to put this video into a form that I can actually get it on. So what happened was, since Senator Bullard had to go on the floor at 9, we did what we had to do with Randy Grellner, and Dr. Grellner, and we had to get him on at 8. And so I had to interview Senator Bullard at 8 o'clock. So I guess I haven't had enough coffee. My brain isn't quite getting up there. I had to interview Senator Bullard at 8 in order to be able to get him on the floor. So what I'm going to do here in just a minute is I am going to play the video of the interview that I did with Senator Bullard this morning, and I've got to pull it in. So give me just a second to find that and pull it in. And it was a great interview, and we talked about a number of things, and I think you're really going to enjoy it. I'm not sure what that is, Denise. What is that? Yes, I need to I think my co-host is coming on, Gloria, and I will let him start the video while I run down and grab some coffee, because that may be what I need to do. Okay, so hold on and let me find where this always happens when you're coffee. Yes, Denise, coffee. That's what I need. A little more coffee. Okay, so I'm having problems trying to find out where my video is going to be. Hang on just a second. Hang with me. So are you saying yeah, I know. Isn't that what Julia says? Are you saying that it's going to be just an hour? Well, I don't know if I have to roam around trying to find. Michael's trying to tell me something. Am I putting you on or not putting you on? I put you on.
I have no sound. If you can hear me, I don't have any sound. I got to get it figured out.
Okay, so you can't hear me.
I can't hear you.
Okay, all right. Well, we'll let Michael get that figured out, and I will go back to trying to find the video so that we can get started with Senator Bullard here. Literally I'm looking in the wrong folder. So that's going to help a lot if I start looking in the right folder. Guess what? I just found it. Okay. See, this is what happens when you look in the right folder. Things actually kind of work out. Okay. So since we're waiting for Michael, and somebody's laughing.
All right, I got it.
Gloria, yes. Okay, did you figure it out?
Yep.
Are you sure?
Yep. All
Okay, so
good.
Gloria Bannister has already said this morning, I'm going to show you what she said. Love Senator David Bullard. Michael, they have laptops at Sam's Club cheap. I'll pick you one up.
Hey, sounds good. Thanks,
Don't
Gloria.
know what it is about you and your laptop.
Thanks. No, I'm not on my my work computer, my PC at the office.
So is it operator trouble then? Because you just seem
No.
to have these problems.
No, I got a new microphone for you right here. And
okay.
when I put that on, it switches my audio to, you know how these microphones, they have like combo headphones.
Oh yeah.
So it switches, it automatically, when I turn this microphone on, it automatically switches it to that instead of my speakers. So I just had to switch it back.
I have the same problem.
Yeah, I didn't realize that it switched it like that. So
well, so many things happen and then they don't tell you about it. So when we got on StreamYard this morning, I went, oh, this is a new thing. Please don't give me a new thing like 2 seconds before I have to go live on the air. That's like not a very helpful thing. So I have no idea what that was, but I did get this done. Look at this.
I'm doing good, sis. You doing okay?
There we go. Hold on. Okay. So anything you want to talk about before we get Senator Bullard on?
Yeah. Which I need to bring the article up, and it doesn't have anything to do with what's going on today. It's just, I like to keep President Trump on watch just in case. Yeah. But the new CDC director that he's kind of putting out there, this chick is a vaccine lover, Bill Gates lover. I hope that she doesn't actually.
Heard she's terrible.
It's just kind of anti-Maha. I mean, I love the whole Maha everything, and I can't stand this. I can't stand this lady. So,
yeah, but everybody's been saying that. It's not just you. I mean, I've seen it's all over Twitter. What are you thinking, President Trump? I mean, I have no idea. I'm hoping that maybe it's not something that's going to stick.
Yeah, maybe not. I mean, she's the acting director right now. I don't think she's completely, like a.
Well, you would hope RFK would go over there and knock some sense into him.
Well, I would think RFK would be the one putting the nominees up. I mean, I would personally, I'd love to see Joseph Ladapo, who was the Surgeon General down there in Florida, who was, probably the best guy altogether with all the COVID stuff from the beginning. He did all those investigations, and I mean, he was really good.
I don't know that guy, but I'm going to take your word for it.
Yeah.
So let's go ahead and play the interview with Senator Bullard. And while you start that, then I'm going to run down and grab some more coffee so that I'm cogent during the whole thing. So I'll let you, feel that, but let's get this started. Again, this is a recorded interview because they had to be on the floor at 9:00. And he didn't want to not be there, and I didn't want to take him off the floor. So I got on at 8 and recorded it.
This is just about legislation, current legislation.
No, not just legislation. We had a really good. He's so much fun to talk to. I mean, honestly, if you don't know, I hesitate to call him David because he's a senator, but if you don't know him, you should get to know him. He's a really, he used to be a teacher. He used to be a history teacher. And he's just so good at explaining things that, I don't know. Let's play the interview because I think you'll really enjoy it. And then I'll leave and then come back in here in just a second. So here you go. This morning.
I'm doing good, sis. You doing okay?
I am doing just fine. So, but I know everybody's going to want to know, man, what the heck is going on in the Senate? First of all, it seems like we got quite a few new people in there and worked kind of hard to do that. And maybe we're not getting as much conservative traction as we thought. I mean, I don't know. Do you feel like you can speak to that or thoughts?
Yeah, I can. Let me explain it. I'll give you the positives and I'll give you the negatives. How's that?
Okay, perfect.
The positives is this group of freshmen are superstars. I mean, not all of them, but there are some really, really, really good ones in there. They're voting right. They're working good. They're asking the right questions. That's good. They're not afraid to stand up and ask questions. That's extremely good. What we hoped we had gotten out of them were independent thinkers, and for the most part, we got that. There's a few of them that are group thinking right now that are being intimidated because in the Senate, the way that it's been the last 6 years and the way it is this year is if you start voting no, if you disagree, if you ask too many questions, you're not going to get your bills heard. And so if you fall into that trap, well, I'll start voting yes with them, and then that way I'll get my bills heard. That's a trap, and it's an unprincipled trap that we don't want to get into, and we should never be put in that position in the Senate. It ought to be that you vote your conscience, you vote your district, you vote your principles. We're going to give you an equal opportunity, may not be perfectly equal, but we'll give you an equal opportunity to argue the point that you're trying to make. And if the bill fails, that's on me. I need the chance to stand up and argue the bills. And, that just hasn't been happening. And it's been an odd year because things that we haven't been able to get hearings on, we got hearings on. And things that we normally could get out of committee didn't even get a hearing in committee. So, it's kind of switching seats on the Titanic. We're going down one way or another. And so that's been part of the problem that we've run into. But there is a massive imbalance right now in the Senate. I don't know how the House is working. I haven't been paying attention. But on the Senate side, you have members of the Senate like me that have gotten 2 bills. And then you have members of the establishment side that have they're pushing 15, maybe over 15, 20 bills by now.
I've seen Lonnie Paxton's name on numerous.
Oh yeah, all of them. If you're part of the cool kid club, then you're gonna get every bill you ever dreamed. And we were told, send in your priorities, and I sent in my priorities, and I'm not on the agenda today. I wasn't on the agenda yesterday. I've gotten 2 bills heard.
Well, they are doing that in the House as well. So our friend Jim Shaw has gotten 0 bills heard. So I'm still trying to figure out how that we have representative government if that's happening.
But we don't. And that was one of the arguments I made on a bill that I know you and I are probably going to talk about, but it's on the initiative petition reform. Because initiative petitions are a form of direct democracy. And I had people argue with me, well, you're taking away our direct democracy. And I said, good, we're not a direct democracy. The founders hated democracy.
I'm sure that went over well.
Yeah.
Yep.
And they were like, what are you talking about? And I would ask them, why don't you turn around and pledge to that flag right there? When you pledge to that flag, you're not pledging to the democracy. You're pledging to what? To a republic. Article 4, Section 4, I quoted it on the floor, says that the Congress is there to guarantee to each state a Republican form of government. We're not a democracy. Right. Ben Franklin was the one who said democracy is like 2 wolves and a sheep voting on what's for dinner. It doesn't work. And if you're tired of these out-of-state liberal billionaires running in here and forcing Medicaid expansion and marijuana on you.
Yeah.
And a lot worse to come, by the way. If you think that Medicaid expansion is a bad idea, just wait until you see some of the ones they've got coming up. I mean, if we sit still on this one, we will have abortion on demand by anyone for any reason at any time. If we just sit still. And that's what a lot of people are saying. Oh, we like the system the way that it is. Well, yeah, if you're a liberal, you probably love this thing. But you have to understand you're a republic.
Explain where the initiative petition procedure is now and what the bill to fix that would do.
Yeah. So right now, the initiative petition, we're one of 25 states that have an initiative petition system, a direct democracy. And that initiative petition was put in 1907 in our Constitution. Of course, everybody must know our Constitution is an example of how not to write a Constitution. And it was written by progressives. So it's not a shock that initiative petition got put in at that point. And they just brought it in during our convention when they were writing in my readings of the history of it. And our process says that 8% of the signatures, if you're amending our statute, have to have 8% from the latest gubernatorial election, 15% if you're going to change the Constitution. So just to give you an example, 805, which is Medicaid expansion, they put that in the Constitution. They did not put that in statute. So it's 138% of the poverty rate, which means we have able-bodied, able-minded people on Medicaid, and you, the taxpayer, are paying for this. Yeah. Now, the federal government is coming in and saying, we're going to change the ratio. They sold this by saying it's a 90-10 match. The state only has to put in 10%. And I kept trying to explain to people, the federal government, the government has the attention span of a 10-year-old. We are not going to stay the course. And so if you are taking that bait, you're going to hurt for it. And right now they're looking at 60-40, which I don't blame the federal government for doing. That we have to start cutting spending at the federal government. We are on an unsustainable path. That now means, though, that the taxpayer in Oklahoma has to come up with $700 million in order to pay off that tab. So we were sold a bill of goods, and we're paying for it right now. And we're paying for it because an out-of-state billionaire decided to come into our state, throw something on our ballot, and people fell for it. They thought, oh, great, this is free money. There's no such thing as free. If somebody tells you they want to give you a free puppy, run, slap them, do something, because nothing's free in this world. And so the initiative petition process that I'm proposing changes a few things. One of them is the way they've been able to get the signatures is on the gist, right? So I want to differentiate between the gist and the initiative.
Okay.
The gist is what they're handing you to get you to sign on the paper to say, I want to put this on the ballot, to get that.
Oh, I see what you're saying. So they're not giving you the whole thing. They're
Correct.
Just giving you a summary, basically.
Just a summary of what it is that they're going to do. And
okay.
Just right now, the law says that the gist just has to be a simple, short statement. That is all. The law is almost silent on the gist. So we put a lot of guidelines on there about using euphemisms, being fraudulent. They have to tell them physically, is this going to be a tax increase? They have to tell them how much money this is going to cost. They have to tell them where the money's coming from to pay for the signatures. A very, very transparent process in getting that gist. And we put in there that the Secretary of State, if it doesn't follow those guidelines, the Secretary of State can just kick the gist out and say, no, this violates state law.
Okay.
And that way, if we have somebody coming in here trying to put on there something to fake the people out, then the Secretary of State can be a good check on that to say, no, you have to be honest with people about what it is that you're trying to do. The ballot initiative is when you're going to vote. The initiative is on that ballot, and you read that to say, do I want to vote yes or no on this? Okay. The other thing that it does is it requires that all signature gatherers have to be legal Oklahoma electors. That means you have to be a resident of Oklahoma, essentially, which is very, very good. If we have to follow these laws, it should be done by Oklahomans. The third thing that it does is it requires all the money coming in. You and I have worked on this a lot with these spending on campaigns. Yeah. And this is a step towards that, because it says all money spent on the signature gathering has to come from inside the state of Oklahoma. You cannot go outside of the state. Fourth is probably the biggest one. Pardon me, I've got the stuff. The fourth one is probably the biggest one. We set up where they go get those percentages. So right now they go to 2 counties, maybe 3 counties, maybe Cleveland County, and to gather those signatures. So what I said was, you can get 10%, no more than 10% of your signatures can come out of one of the 2 major, both of the major metropolitan. So that's 20%. To get the other 80%, they got to go out to 20 other counties, and they can get no more than 4% of the signatures, so that it forces them into 20 other counties.
Yeah, I like that. Yeah,
that'll put a check on it. And some of the crazy stuff that's coming down the pike, this blanket primary, which we need to delve into that, by the way. But the blanket primary idea, which is patently unconstitutional, this U.S. Supreme Court has already struck this down, and they will strike this one down if it goes through. But things like that are coming, and we know the abortion question is coming, and that's why liberals are fighting this so hard. If you want your state to turn blue, keep it a pure democracy.
Yeah. So where is that bill now? Did it get into committee? It's gotten out of committee. It's supposed to be going to the floor.
No, I heard it on the floor last Tuesday and argued it
Okay.
for about a little over 2 hours on the floor. So
2 hours
it's in
to
the
make
House
people
now.
understand what you just explained in 5 minutes here.
Yeah, if you're conservative, you shouldn't have any problem with this at all. The major pushback that I had were all liberal groups and liberal organizations.
Yeah, but don't forget, I mean, the Republicans have the majority, so it should be an easy sell, right? I mean,
yeah, I don't know yet. We're going to see. I actually have Kyle Hilbert is my author on that one, so that gives it a better shot at going through, and he's on board with it. So I think Hilbert's going to push it and move through. And we've got a lot of the faith-based organizations that are really behind this because they can see what's coming.
Right. Okay, well, we had another couple that we wanted to talk about, and one of them, and I have neglected to get the bill number because I'm just right on top of everything right now. It's the bill, it just passed the Senate yesterday, which I'm so disgusted about, and it's the bill to start a database, a state longitudinal database, when we already have a state longitudinal database. I still couldn't figure out. I mean, I've written about it. We've talked about it. What is going on with that?
Yeah, it's just one more type of data tracking for our kids. I mean,
well, what's their reasoning behind any of this?
The claim is that if we can track what they're doing in school, then we can do a better job of helping them get through school. But the reality is, before we started in on the federal spending in education, our public education system was actually pretty good, and we never tracked then.
Yeah.
So, I mean, Trump is dead on this one right now on getting rid of the Department of Education. Of course, I've run that bill since I've been in, for us to create a 10-year plan to get us off of federal funding for our education.
Well, and I think it's important to say too, while we're on this topic, and then we can flip back over to the next one. But, my thought is I'm happy to get rid of the thing, but until we get rid of the Elementary and Secondary Education Act, which is the main federal law governing education, you can close the building, but if you still have the law, all of that stuff is going to have to get met at another agency, Department of Labor, DHS, wherever that goes. It's got to go someplace. So we've done one thing. We've stopped the building and kick the people out, but we still have the law to have to worry about. So when the law's gone, then I'll be more excited about that.
Yeah, it's gonna take Congress to step up and actually do something on that to get away from it. And it ought to be fully returned to the states.
Yeah.
Let us handle it. If they want to write a block grant, then that's different, but that's up to them. But the money shouldn't be tied to any law, any kind of program. But every federal dollar right now is attached to something that's not good for our kids.
Absolutely.
This one's going to be the same way. I mean, we don't need to track our kids more. We need to track our kids less. We need to let parents be parents and do their thing. And so, no, I don't want the state oversight, Big Brother concept implemented in the state.
Well, you had another bill, though, that you were talking about before we got on, and you were telling me about the fact that it was also another tracking bill. Which bill is this bill?
Yeah, so there was a bill actually that was passed. It was Senate Bill 942 and a companion bill on it, Senate Bill 991, which was in our higher education about anti-Semitism quote. So let me be clear on that. There is no definition put in our law about what anti-Semitism is. And therein lies the problem. When you start trying to define that, and the author actually referred to it as hate speech. And I very quickly went to it and said, there's no such thing as hate speech. Hate speech doesn't exist. The First Amendment covers dumb speech, hate speech, smart speech, intermediate speech. It protects all of it. And so for a state to try and define it, and this is getting pulled off of Trump's executive order, but actually in his executive order, it was much better written, and it wasn't what this is. But and even in Trump's executive order, I've got questions on that, by the way, because we're getting into the thought police when we get into stuff like that. So we got to be very, very careful. There's a very thin line here. But in that bill, they don't actually define anti-Semitism. They just use a website. They go to an organization, the International Holocaust Association, something like that. I'd have to go back and read exactly what it was. But if you'll go to their website, what the definition is incredibly loose, which is really always scares me when we're talking about something like this. And then secondly, the biggest problem with it is when you go down and look at what this organization, where we took that definition from, and now they're trying to put it in our law, they said an example of anti-Semitism, according to that definition, is that it would be anti-Semitism to say that Jesus was killed by Jews. Let me repeat that just to make sure. Their definition of anti-Semitism is that it's anti-Semitic to say that Jesus was killed by the Jews. Every pastor in the state of Oklahoma, every college campus, every BCM that uses the Bible now would be guilty of violating this law by stating a fact that Jesus was killed by Jews. And so it is highly, highly problematic. But then if you go further down in the bill, it has a DEI component to it where it says that we're going to track and make sure that the Title VI, the federal government, is going to oversee this and make sure that you're complying to this, that everybody's doing this, and it's all being spread equally. And then it says it's going to go in there and say that you have to report to Title VI about, how many of these you've had and what you've done about them and all of those kinds of things. So there is a definite reporting and tracking component to that as well.
And that passed the Senate floor.
Yes. And matter of fact, I had emails go out into my district that I'm anti-Semitic and oppose Trump because I did that, because I voted no. So
yeah, I've known you quite a long time, and I could vouch for neither of those.
Yeah. Yeah. What's funny is when they do those kinds of things, I'm very active in my district. People in my district know who I am. They have my cell phone.
Yeah.
And so they were texting me laughing at it. They weren't taking it serious. They were like, hey, just wanted you to know some bozo sent this out. And I said, yeah, let me tell you what it is.
But still in all, the thing that bothers me about it is we have Republicans in the Senate that caved to really what amounts to bullying. It is what it is. And then there's this component of, oh, well, I stopped anti-Semitism. I mean, there's this, but I don't even understand where people's heads are anymore, that they think that it's better to protect a group without thinking about it long term, or it's better to protect a group and then to heck with the rest of the people. I mean, I don't understand it, Senator. So I was going to say something really fast about that, and I couldn't think of the term at the time. This is virtue signaling. I mean, Michael, how is that not virtue signaling? And
yeah, 100%.
I mean, so I'm hoping that those of you who are watching this morning, and there are quite a few comments. I've got to go back and do some here in a little bit.
Hey, go ahead. Sorry to interrupt. Go ahead.
But to me, this whole anti-Semitism bill is predictive of what Republicans think of. I mean,
oh yeah,
I'm so disgusted by that. I mean, really, honestly, we talked about it more in a minute, but this is a big deal. I mean, this is a big deal.
Yeah.
And if you guys like your free speech, you're going to figure out how to stop this in the House, because this is a big, bad deal.
Yeah. Well, and kind of like you were saying there, talking about the groups, I don't like just blindly defending a group no matter what. Just saying, okay, this group has to be defended no matter what happens or what the circumstances are. I mean, just like anything, you need to be judged and there needs to be consequences for things that actually happen, when they happen. So I just hate the blind coverage and defense of a group that, no matter what group it is.
Well, and like Andrew says, it's a beachhead for totalitarianism because
yeah,
as soon as you
100%.
can say, well, you can't say this, then automatically there's no freedom there in that at all.
Yeah.
The anti-Semitism bill is very broad and most likely will be used in a bad way. The House must put an end to it, but I have little faith they will. And I'm the same way with you.
Well, I mean, really, and Jenny is like anti-Semitism. Is it really a problem here? I mean, is there really massive violence and massive things happening and massive discrimination here in Oklahoma for, I mean, I'm just me personally, I've never seen or heard anything. And maybe I'm just clueless.
Well, it's happening in other areas of the country. I'm surprised that you're asking me. I'm surprised that you're even bringing this up, actually, because you know how it is. We're not 50 individual states. Remember, the Pledge of Allegiance says indivisible. And so if it's happening in one state, then we better snap to and figure out how to deal with it in our state. It's all BS. It's just simple BS. And virtue signaling. Oh, look, I love Jews, so I'm going to do this. Well, that's virtue signaling. If you love Jews, love Jews. I mean, why do we have to encode that in law? I mean, because if you're encoding it in law, then maybe you don't like Baptists. I mean, do we need to have a law for Baptists now? Well, no, you can't say that because I'm a Baptist. I mean, it's
well, and another thing to that, when you actually encode that in law, now you're actually legally giving an avenue to like pit people against each other. To pit one group against another, against someone else, where they have a legal avenue to go do something that may not have existed before, and they just, it wouldn't have happened. Now you can go to the extreme on one of these sides.
I don't get how people don't get it. Because what if I just said to you, what if I made a blanket generalization about Jews? People who are Jewish.
Yeah, shouldn't matter. Why should it matter?
Jews, it's like, ugh. But what I'm saying is, if this goes in to law and I make some blanket generalization and you get mad at me because your family is Jewish or something and you get mad at me, then I can be brought up on charges.
Yeah.
It is like Andrew said, it's totalitarianism, it's authoritarianism, and we'll go on with because
well, hey, look, I got a shirt. I got a new shirt just for you.
What is it?
It says create equality, got a picture of Mao. It says murder everyone.
Yeah, that's
pretty much what we're looking at here. Just create equality, murder everybody.
What we talked about. So let's continue to go on, but I really wanted to point that out because Melissa says there are some very scary bills. There are many more scary bills out there. Sarah says, cynical me, where's the common sense at the Capitol? Wait, okay. Yeah, silly you. Common sense, Capitol, same word, same sentence, not sure. Taking away liability on foreign chemical companies or arguing that passing SB 4 to remove toxic dyes from food will starve the poor people of Oklahoma. Yeah, I'm not, oh God, yes. Yeah. Totally get you.
And I want to go back to that because I starred another one of Sarah's comments that I want to talk about after we get done.
Afterwards? Okay. Yeah. All right. Okay. Because there are some starred ones on here and I see them. So hang on. Okay. Let's finish up here. It's a frustration for me. Yikes. Did it even get argued at all, this bill? Or
the anti-Semitism? Yeah. We stood up for a long time. There were a lot of people who stood up and asked some very good questions. I thought, honestly, Senator Sacchieri stood up and asked probably the most intelligent questions on there. I would highly encourage for people to go watch that debate and look at it and then go read the bill for yourself. I think on the front, we get into this trap up here where people will say, hey, I've got an anti-Semitism bill. And on the surface, you'll look at that and say, oh, okay, I don't like it. I'm very protective of Israel and Jewish people. I have no problem with that. And then you start reading the language and you realize that what they're calling an anti-Semitism bill is actually an anti-free speech bill. And when you start really digging into what it is, I've told several of the freshmen as they've come up and others, there are those who will come to you and say, I've got a really good idea for a bill. I want you to support me on it. And when they tell it to you, the smartest thing you can say back to them is, I like the idea. Let me go read the bill. Because a bad bill or a good idea, let me change it and put it this way. A good idea with bad language is still a bad idea.
Yeah.
And so I don't disagree with the concept of having to get a handle what Trump is trying to do on anti-Semitism, but how you do that matters. And you have to do it within the confines of the Constitution. I've told people before, I will stop short only of sin and violating the U.S. Constitution to get done what I want to get done.
Yeah.
Those are the two things that I will stop short of.
Well, I guess the curiosity I have about that kind of thing is it not up to law enforcement in states to get a handle on that? So, for example, if a temple is defaced or, somebody is injured in some kind, in a targeted action of violence, isn't that the state law enforcement's job to
It is, but it's not illegal to say stupid things. And so
Right.
that's where, when I say we have a hard time, when we start trying to put things like that in law,
Yeah.
finding a definition that is accurate enough that does not put undue burden on the freedom of speech
Yeah.
is a little bit tough. So law enforcement, if somebody's sitting, let's say somebody's sitting at a student union and they just say how much they hate Jewish people. Okay, you have the freedom to be dumb. I can't help you there, but I have a hesitation to create a law to arrest you for saying that. And that's what I'm worried about.
Yeah, because I think people don't understand that people have the right to be bigoted.
Sure.
I mean,
Yeah,
they
you
do
have the right. I don't agree with you, but that's what we're running into.
Yeah.
We can circle that back around to what you and I started off this whole thing talking about. Do I have a right to vote no on bills that I disagree with? Well, the way that it's working and has worked for years in the Senate, no, you don't. If you start voting no, they're going to punish you and take away your people's voice. And that's the problem that we have. We don't have a truly representative form of government right now within your legislature, because if you truly speak out and use your First Amendment, you get punished for it.
Well, we were talking about this the other day about the caucus idea, how it's supposed to be individual legislators in the state capitol who are individually elected by individuals. It's all supposed to be individual, but then you get to the capitol and it's like, well, caucus wants this and caucus wants that. And all of a sudden it becomes this little blob, of collective thinking. And, I think that tends to be destructive too. I mean, groupthink comes in all different forms. And that's one of the things you and I have talked about that. We just have to struggle against groupthink.
Well, and you have to allow freedom of thought, freedom of speech. They hate it that we meet as groups and discuss bills. And yet they do the same thing. What they want to do is monopolize how they have it set up so that you can't argue with them. And I will say this year, it just seems like it's gotten worse because there's really nothing else. There's nothing stopping them. It's the same lieutenants running the Senate, and those same lieutenants they are hell-bent on stopping conservative stuff.
Is there a reason for that? I mean, does it tie back to money? Is it, we have the wind lobby who comes in and dishes out all this money, and we know they do. I mean, what is it that makes them want to put the kibosh on conservative ideals?
Well, I think number one, if you're embarrassed by conservative concepts, guess what? You're not. So I think that you could probably look at it from that stance. And it's like I was telling people back during the summer and fall when I was speaking around the state, we're not asking for something difficult. We're asking for you to be what you sent in my mailbox on a push card. or you handed me my doorstep. That's all we're asking for. So if you put on there that you're a conservative Republican, then we expect you to be conservative. But they've come up with they've done what liberals do. They twist word meanings. Yeah. And so to them, a conservative means something completely different than what it really is.
A conservative to them, in my perspective, this is just my perspective. I'm curious to hear yours, but in my perspective, a conservative to them is all about corporatism. It's all about helping fund people who fund businesses, and then we turn around and say, oh, but this will help your kid get a job, right. Or, oh, we have to do this so that we can have jobs in Oklahoma. But really all it's doing is helping people, specific people, not everybody, but the specific people that they want to see in business and have businesses. That's what it appears to me. I mean,
yeah, and a lot of that's because they're doing what the lobbyists are telling them to do. And I think you nailed it at the first part of that. The reality is you either do what your people are telling you to do, or you do what you said you were going to be and do, or you come up here and do what the lobbyists tell you to do. Now, there's some lobbyists up here that have great ideas. I'm not going to knock all of them. There's some of them that have some really good ideas. They catch a lot of problems. And so it's not that you ignore them. It's that you do what you told your people you would be.
Right.
And you vote accordingly to that. But
you
right now,
a framework,
according to that, you're punished.
And you operate off the framework.
Yeah, and the framework ought to be a biblical understanding of the world, followed by a constitutional understanding of government.
Yeah. Well, and that's the other thing. I think at some point we're going to need to come up with, the Republican Party has this 27,000 page platform. And I have always thought it doesn't really help because nobody even has an attention span past 15 seconds anymore. So it just seems to me like we should have 5 things maybe that are conservative ideals, that if you want to call yourself a conservative, these are the 5 things that you have to be. And one of them has to be limited government, and limited government doesn't create bills that tell people what they can and they cannot say, or track them, or that kind of thing.
Well, we ought to, in our platform, at least define what economic development is. Economic development is a tax cut, hands down.
Yeah.
Economic development is less taxes. It's not corporate welfare. It's not a system set up so that a business can come in here and take hundreds of millions of dollars. If you want to, it ought to be defined as one simple thing. Economic development is a tax cut. If that's what you're pushing as economic development, then I'm good with it. And we ought to be on a system on a pathway to zero on income tax right now. But we're not because of Republicans.
Yeah, what happened to that? Because that was, Governor Stitt, we're going to stop the income tax. Well, I mean, and now all of a sudden we're not even discussing this issue. But I've seen that we've passed a number of new revolving funds.
Yep.
And we've failed to sunset a bunch of committees and things that should have been sunset. And 1 second. So Dorn says our state capital has become the swamp. Here's the trick, Dorn. I think our state capital was always the swamp. We just figured it out recently. I think that's the trick. And we just let them go. So how do we get back to this smaller government ideal when we can't even get them to sunset committees and that kind of thing, and we can't keep them from setting up revolving funds for stuff?
Yeah, I had an interesting time. Marshela Pryor, who was the chair of the Okmulgee GOP, asked me if I would come interview all 5 candidates that they had at the time for the Senate up there in that race. And so I did, because she asked me to. And I just asked them questions, and I've been begging people everywhere I speak, stop asking people close-ended questions. Make them pontificate. Make them tell what's on their mind and on their heart. And so I didn't ask them yes or no questions. I asked them good questions. And to Marshela's credit, her and the vice chair at the time sat over there and took notes. And they have a flyer now that you might want to get a hold of. Their GOP questionnaire that they put out is based on the questions that I asked.
Nice.
And I thought that was well played on her part. And it's grassroots is the answer to your question. I don't know that a platform solves it, because people are just going to say, yeah, I agree with the platform.
Yeah.
But I think asking people the right questions from a grassroots organization, where do you stand on economic development? And if they start talking about things that we know lead to corporate welfare, that we ought to have tax credits for businesses that want to come into the state instead of tax cuts for people who already live in this state. If they answer those kinds of questions open-ended like that, you have your answer. You know exactly what they are. And so you might get a hold of that questionnaire from the Okmulgee GOP that I don't know if they put it out or not, but they have a really, really good one that makes them answer open-ended questions. So much so, they had a Republican candidate that refused to fill out their form, who was running for GOP. Yeah, pretty amazing. So, I mean,
but that's good, because that nullifies them right off the bat.
Well, it's just like I told them. I said, guys, if you ask them, what are you going to do to protect my Second Amendment rights? And their answer is, I own guns myself. Stop asking questions and go to somebody else. They're not your person. If you ask them, are you for or against abortion? What are they going to tell you? Jenny, you know what they're going to tell you. They're going to say, I'm opposed to abortion. That wasn't the question. Should be, what are you going to do to end abortion and protect life in the womb? That's what I want to know. What measures will you take to do that? You ought to ask them the question, what is economic development and how will you do it in the state? If they answer that question by saying, I think we ought to expand tax credits for this or for that, you have your answer. The correct answer to that is tax cuts. We ought to be taxing people less. You and I talked about this on school choice. If you want to talk about school choice, what's the most conservative way to get school choice? Tax cuts. Let people have their own money back and take their kids where they want to take them to school. But this idea of vouchers is just absolute nonsense, and it's another form of corporate welfare for private schools. If you want them to have the money, give them a tax cut. Let them take their kids where they want to, and let them stop stealing more of their money so they have the money to take their kids where they want to take them to school.
I like all of that. And I will definitely reach out to Marshila and see if she's got that, because it would sure be nice, especially when we come into election season, to have questions, because people do wonder about that. Because you think, well, I do want to ask this question, and you ask the question and it ends up, but then they'll say yes or no or something like that. Or they, yeah, I own guns. That was a great one. But the other thing is, I think they don't know where to step off even beyond that. So let's say they say the answer to how are you going to protect my Second Amendment rights is, well, I have guns. So, but we've got to get them even past that point where they say, okay, well, that wasn't the answer to my question. So let's try again and tell, you know what I'm saying? We've got to make people understand that it's their right to ask questions, and I would go further. It's not just their right, it's their responsibility as citizens of Oklahoma to ask those questions and nail people who are running for office down.
The Declaration of Independence, one of the questions I asked some of them was, we all know the most famous part of the Declaration of Independence, right? That we hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they're endowed by their creator with certain unalienable rights, and among those are the right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. What's the next line? Most of them couldn't tell you. And to protect these freedoms, governments are instituted amongst men, deriving their just powers, not all powers, their just powers from the consent of the governed. Your job as a legislator or as a sheriff or as a city council or any elected office, your job is to protect my freedoms. That's your job.
Not to write bills,
not to create tax credit structures, none of that. Your job is to protect my freedom. And if you want to do economic development, then you need to work on a tax cut and stop taking and stealing more of my money.
So what bills do you see? I mean, because you've still got a couple of days. What bills do you see that are upcoming that are that are on your radar?
Yeah, you ask good questions. I don't know. I've got a bill stopping DEI from being implemented anywhere within our agencies. And I define.
1 second. I have to throw this in because this is my favorite part too. Julia says, this is my favorite part. But when a long train of abuses and usurpations pursuing invariably the same object evinces a design to reduce them under absolute despotism, it's their right, it is their duty to throw off such government. And as one of our favorite founders said, and to water the tree of liberty with the blood of tyrants.
Here's what I want to know. When is Julia going to run for office? Let's get her in there and start hammering some of these people, Julia. Come on.
That's right. That's right. And Andrew says, yep. And we have government to keep up free and protect our liberties, not to protect me from the freedom of others. That's correct. All right. Sorry. I just had to say that because I love that part.
Higher ed as one of those agencies. I have written to the floor leader team that is my top priority. I've got several. I've got one on the Second Amendment that's a nonviolent felon carry. We've carved out a few of the nonviolent felons.
Let me government so I can absolve all government. I agree, Julia. You're not going to win.
Yeah, there we go. There we go.
I love this crowd. Y'all are my peeps. I love this crowd. Okay, hang on. Let's get back to the senator.
But I think you ought to have a way to earn back your Second Amendment freedom. You served your time. You've done your sentence. Why is it that we're now telling you your Second Amendment right completely went away? That wasn't part of my sentence. So I'd like to see something like that move along. The other one that I'm working on is deed theft, trying to make sure and protect people from a new fad that's out there called deed theft. I've got 2 bills on that.
That's a scary one too.
It is, because it is a very quiet killer of your freedom of property. And there again, that's my attempt, is to protect your freedom to your property. So those are some of the things we're working on. There's a bill up today that's a really good one. That's an anti-ESG bill. It's Casey Murdoch's bill. He's run this thing for years. It is a huge, huge deal. We passed anti-ESG bill against oil and gas.
Yeah,
he's trying to do the same thing to Second Amendment manufacturers. That is one we have to get across the finish line. I don't understand why it's taking this long to get that one through. So there's some of those.
In what respect, ESG? In what respect to Second Amendment?
Yeah. So if you are in the Second Amendment industry, the way they do it is these huge BlackRock and all these investment companies, they actually start reducing your credit score if you do not follow their ESG structure, which means you can't get loans for your business, you can't get money for your business, things like that. And so it's the design of ESG against Second Amendment is that if you're pro Second Amendment, anything, we're not going to let you have any kind of money, financing, whatever, for your business, which is discrimination all the way across. And that bill stops that. Basically, what that bill says is if you discriminate against Second Amendment groups, you're not allowed to invest in our pension system.
Okay.
So when they did that in oil and gas, that's a huge chunk of money in Oklahoma that those investment companies like BlackRock and others, JP Morgan, those groups want to invest in our pension system because it's trillions of dollars.
Yeah.
And so it's a big incentive for them to not discriminate against oil and gas, or in this case, the Second Amendment manufacturers.
Okay, and that one's up today.
That one is up today.
What are your thoughts on that one? Do you think it's going to go?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. Well, that's a good
that's one of those bills. If you put it up, it's going to pass. It's just a matter of whether or not they'll let it see the light of day, and it looks like they've got it on the agenda for today.
Well, that's a good thing. So is there anything else that you that you can think of that's coming up that?
You know, the wind turbine thing is going to be a big deal, because right now the one that we have on the Senate side is just a quarter mile. That's not enough. I can't vote for that bill. There is one on the House side that I am watching to see how that one goes. That one is, they have to stay 2.5 times the top to the tip of the top blade. And it's got some other things in there. What I really wanted when it came to the wind turbine stuff was what I'm after is the local control aspect. If a county wants to vote that they don't want wind turbines, then that county should be allowed to do that. There's not really much of a process to do that right now. And I think that counties ought to have to opt into this, not opt out. It shouldn't be a race and a scramble to opt out of a wind farm that's already starting to buy things up. And so what I'd like to do is return it back to the county level and let you guys organize against this kind of stuff. Because I think out in Western Oklahoma, they're probably going to say yes. They like these. They don't have a problem with them. But in Eastern Oklahoma, we're not. We're not going to do it. Either way, it's your decision. And we've gotten real bad about this top-down situation. Yeah. We've done it in education. We've done it in everything, and we're doing it in the wind turbines as well. Rather than us just telling the counties, it's your responsibility. If you want them, have them. If you don't. But right now, we're looking at just setbacks from a federal or from a state level. I'll be watching that House bill to see how that one comes across to us.
Well, you had the carbon capture bill come through too, I think. Hasn't Senator Rader's bill on carbon capture been heard?
Yeah, I believe it has. I voted no on it, but I can't. It passed, and so it's coming through, and that's becoming a huge deal right now because there's so many federal credits on that Green New Deal stuff. That's just one part of it. One really good bill that did pass out of the Senate was Gallagher's bill on eminent domain, where wind energy, solar energy can't use eminent domain.
Yeah,
and I'm actually working to get hydro energy facilities added to that where they cannot take eminent domain, because right now they're trying to do that on the Kiamichi River.
Yes,
where they're going to take like I think 35,000 acres of eminent domain. That doesn't work. So we're working to get that added right now. Matter of fact, both authors have said that they will do it.
Oh, good.
Yeah. So I think we can do we've got a little bit of a stop there on that one.
Well, that's a good thing. So in your kind of estimation, do you feel like people there are understanding that most people don't want the green energy nonsense? I mean, in that, Trump has come out and said, you know, he's not a green energy fan. He doesn't want to keep propping this stuff up. Why is it that Oklahomans in our legislature seem to think that this is such a grand idea, this green energy stuff?
Yeah, I don't know on that. You ask a really good question. I don't know if they're just ignoring grassroots. I have heard some of that. Our elections this last time, you would have thought that in our elections, you would have heard that loud and clear from grassroots.
Yeah, no kidding.
But what I'm hearing from people is, oh, no, it was just low voter turnout that got those people beat. That was not what got them beat.
No.
It was the green energy push. It was the tax credit concept on things. It was not listening to your constituents, not being out listening to your constituents. So I don't know. I think a lot of it is there's a lot of money for them in their campaign if they run that kind of legislation, because it's just the lobby group is enormous on that stuff. And so they would rather be on the side that gets the money than the side that gets attacked in their election by the lobby group. But I'll be honest with you, I'd rather be attacked by one of these large lobbying firms than I would grassroots any day of the week. So I'm going to always be on the side of grassroots because those are the folks on the ground doing it right.
Well, one other bill, and that was I think it's on the House side, so it's going to be coming over to the Senate, and that's the one about, and I haven't seen it on the floor. I don't know if it passed yesterday or not, but it's about giving nurses the ability to prescribe basically all schedules of drugs without a doctor's consent.
Yeah.
That's been a real concern, but I think people don't seem to understand what the problem with that is. If it gets over to the Senate, I would imagine you're going to fight it, but I would imagine we'll need other people to do it. What is it about that concept? I mean, because people think, oh, well, it's a nurse, what is it about that concept that's just not good for our healthcare system?
Yeah. So let me start with this, and then I'll dive into the back part of your question. The first part of it is the same thing I ran into when we were fighting the anti-Semitism bill yesterday. A lot of people just don't want to go on a vote because they're going to get labeled as anti-whatever.
Anti-nurse.
Yeah, and I love my nurses. I mean, we've got some of the most fantastic nurses and nursing programs in the state. Murray State College has an awesome nursing program, and I'm extremely proud of them for how they do it. And I'm proud of that. That's one of the few higher ed university systems I can actually support, because their president doesn't do DEI. He doesn't do all the junk. He's actually doing it right. And so, but that's a lot of it. People don't want to get labeled as somehow anti-nurse. And nurses in my district have come to me and said, I want you to vote yes on this. And I've said, with all due respect, I can't, because there's one barrier stopping you from prescribing those drugs. And it's the education system necessary to prescribe those drugs. And if you want to do it, don't come to the government to shortcut education. If you want to do it, go get the schooling and do it. You're smart enough. You're obviously smart enough to go get the education to go and get that done. I just think it gets incredibly dangerous when the government starts shortcutting education like that. Because where does that stop? Somebody on the floor last year asked a really good question. I think it was Senator Weaver, but I can't remember. He said, now that we're doing this, are we going to start shortcutting superintendents, that you no longer have to have a master's degree or doctorate degree to be a superintendent, or that a teacher, that you no longer have to have a bachelor's degree to be a teacher? Those would all be huge mistakes, because you need to be highly educated in that system in which you're teaching and what you're doing. And so it's a mistake all the way around the board. We want better educated people administering these kinds of drugs. And it is a fact. People need to understand this. It is a fact that this will introduce 6,000 more people who can prescribe RU-486 in the system. Because if we allow this, and for those who don't know, RU-486 is the abortifacious drug, the cocktail. You now would have 6,000 more people able to prescribe that drug statewide if you pass this thing. This is a disaster.
Well, we had Dr. Randy Grellner on last week, and he was talking about something that I totally didn't even think about, which was there are regular scheduled drugs that doctors can prescribe right now that if you don't make sure your patient isn't pregnant, they'll abort.
Yeah.
If you give them. So the education component, like you said, is huge. Yeah. We're running down on time because I know you've got to get on the floor, but I want to ask this one last question. So we had you on before, I think it was November, before session started, to try to talk about Sooner Care and what's going on with Sooner Care. Are we getting any closer to a solution on that? Because I know I still have people out there who are just beside themselves with what's going on with our Medicaid system.
Yeah, no, we knew, I told you when we started, we knew that I was not going to get a hearing on eliminating managed care. And that's because of that lobby. There's a huge lobby group out there that wants it. Actually, I had an interesting conversation because we're working on two bills. Randy Grellner has one. Julie McIntosh has another that are bills on surprise medical billing, and another one on what's called right to shop, where you can take your insurance voucher and take it outside of network and go shop it wherever you want. So if it's closer to home, a doctor you like, it's your business. It's a free market concept. And I was kind of shocked at some of the comments from some of the large hospital organizations. They don't like this managed care thing. So we may have found a little bit of chink in their armor to see if we can get with some of these hospital associations and different groups out there to see if they'll help us get managed care killed. That's not one I'm ever going to give up on. We're going to fight managed care till the day I'm done. And so we'll see what happens on that. And but right now, no, we're not moving anywhere with it. There's just too much money in it.
It just breaks my heart because so many. I talked to a person the other day who has an adopted child, and they were saying they can't get dental care for them right now because the insurance just isn't coming through, and they just can't afford to out of pocket it. And it's making me so mad. So we'll have to work together over the break
Yep.
to see if we can't help you get something done there, because that's just got to stop. But it's kind of funny because I look at it, you when you interviewed with us before and you were talking about it, you said they'd done it twice before, right? They tried it twice.
Once. They've done it once back in 1992, I think.
Yeah, and it didn't work. And so
Well,
it's so progressive, you know, that whole idea is so progressive. Well, if we just do it this way, it'll work this time.
Yeah, it's like socialism. You know, when you talk to socialists and you tell them how many people have died, let's see, 1.7 million killed by Kim Jong-un,
yes.
45 million killed by Mao Zedong, 67 million killed by Stalin and Lenin combined. But we'll get it right this time if we do socialism in America. We'll get it right. Same concept here. I mean, it's like I was saying before, managed care is just a shave away from single payer socialized medicine. It's a bad idea, and it's always been a bad idea.
And sadly, our medical system, just in general, it seems to just be completely, the wheels seem to be coming off.
And you got doctors right now that are leaving. And why would they stay? I don't blame them. I've been begging them not to, because I just give me a little bit of time. But I understand. I mean, they look at who's in charge here, and they say that they're not going to undo managed care. So why would we do that? So I get their frustration. I think we're going to wreck the system before we figure it out. And George Washington said, the problem is with liberty is people must feel pain before they react. I think we're going to have a pretty wrecked system before people are willing to stand up and say no more of this.
Well, but it's the same way with education, for Pete's sakes. I mean, we do the same thing. That's why good teachers have left and keep leaving, because the system is just so horrendous. But we don't seem to be doing anything about it other than just giving public schools more money.
Yeah. Well, and what's interesting is every time we give schools money, we say, well, we'll get the reforms next year. Well, the reforms ought to be now, and the money ought to be based on performance. But really, you know, it goes back to our conversation before. We've gone to this top-down method of everything, including education. So, you know, we ran a bill on cell phones here just the other day. I voted no on it because that's a school board issue. That's not a state issue. There's a red line for me. If it's dealing with LGBTQ agendas, if it's dealing with transgender ideology, stuff like that, you know, the state can step in then and needs to do something about it. But we're talking about cell phones or virtual days. We're going to have a bill up either today or tomorrow trying to limit the number of virtual days. I don't disagree that too many virtual days is not a good thing, but you have an elected school board that's there to solve that problem. I would love to see
in
us
rural
right now.
areas.
Oh, yeah. And I would love to see us right now remove the salary, the minimum salary scale that we have within the state. Most people think that the state is the sole funder of teacher salaries in schools. Local governments, local taxes are the ones that pay the bulk of that money. We pay a mid-sized fraction of it. Now it's growing because we keep just throwing more money into it and your local areas don't. But I've had people say, well, what if they pay my teachers less? Then go to your school board and ask them, why are you paying them? The government that governs best is the one closest to you. And so we really need to get away from the top-down method and let your locals, districts control as much as we can allow.
Well, on that, because I agree with you, that's how I like to roll around. But seriously, I mean, that's a great place to end up, because that's how you get personal liberty. The more liberty is closest to you, it's not out there. So, Senator, thank you so much for being with me at this morning. We really appreciate you, and you know, just hang in there. And, you know, we'll keep in touch, and definitely over the summer, we'll get back, you know, with you on this, because we've got to make more people aware of what's going on with the managed care and getting into that with so many of these other things. So thank you for being with us.
Yeah. Thank you.
Really appreciate appreciate it, and have a blessed day, and we'll see you next time.
Yes, ma'am. You too.
So there you go. This one cracks me up. I can't wait. Shoot. Where was it? Oh, as a school member, I would pay this is Julie again. I would pay teachers more than administrators, but I also can't get elected to do that. You're on mute. You're on mute.
All right. So we're in that vein of talking about school board for just a second. I want to dovetail into something that Senator Bullard said. You know, he said, you know, the elected school board members are the one who kind of controls that local policy. And I want to add an S in there. I guarantee you, Jenny, it's not elected school board members. These are selected. Selected. They're literally groomed to do what the district wants and not have accountability. I just want to throw that in there. But something that, you know, is kind of at the heart of you with all of these things we talk about, all these subjects, all these different guests, all this stuff. I just want to mention, to me, the root of all these problems go back to one thing, and that is education. I mean, it really goes back to education, because if we turned our schools into, you know, not anti-government, but just away from the big brother type of model, and you literally taught free market, constitution, government, civics, your liberty, rights, real history, things like that, and actually taught it from K all the way through 12, not just one little class that you have on history or one little class you may have on government. You teach these kids about money. You teach them about finance. You teach them about the history of banking in this country. You teach them all this stuff. You have a completely different country in 10 or 20 years. Completely different. All those things are just 100% put on the back burner, negated in every possible way. I mean, I love to say that the grassroots can activate and we can do all this, but until we get these kids to understand that, you know, what liberty is, what the Constitution is, what we actually fought for, what we fought against, all those things, you know, until those kids understand that, it's going to be tough, in my opinion, Jenny.
Well, and Roberta probably makes the biggest one. This is the reason why I left. Your classroom teachers can't enforce policies the administration won't back them on.
Yeah.
Administration gets their marching orders from the superintendent. Your superintendent is accountable to your school board. This is the reason why I left teaching. If I did something and it was perfectly legitimate, but then they just then I didn't get backed. I mean, Julia said, I would teach them thou shalt not steal. If we did that, that would solve a lot of the problems. Back up here, Cam said, I would love to see elections on district superintendent. I don't know, Cam, because I think what would end up happening with that is you would have so much money, so much dark money dumped into these. I mean, the problem that we have is that the education community is just far, far left. I mean, as a rule, they're just far, far left. So, and they want to protect what's theirs because they don't care about the end result. They care about the agenda, and they don't care how they get to the agenda. They have an end result they want to make. So they have an agenda for that, and they're going to go all the way through until they get to the end. I mean, when you read the Skousen book, the red
5,000 Year Leap?
No, the other one where he basically goes through the Communist Manifesto. When you read that one, and you look at it and you think, oh my gosh, back then they wanted to do this and now we're doing it. Back then they wanted this and now we're doing it. And back then they've been so single-minded to where they started at one point.
Naked communist.
Naked communist. That's exactly what it is. Naked communist. And we don't have that. I mean, we don't, that's not something that we do. We won't stick it out to see the end result. We are always on defensive. We're never playing offensive. We don't run offensive plays. We always just want to get the big guys to go, try to prevent what they're doing. It's the worst thing ever. Oops, I missed quite a few.
Well, you know what's so wild about a lot of those books from Skousen and a ton of those guys, back from 40, 50, 60 years ago, all those communist, Marxist type of ideals, that's literally what has happened.
Yeah.
I mean, they put all those tenets basically in activation through slow kill just over time. And that's almost what we live in. Like, you read those books and it's literally your school system today. It's literally all this crazy gender stuff, all the crazy everything. It's just happened.
It is. And Roberta makes another good point. Your school board's job is to hold your superintendent accountable. The board absolutely has the ability to fire the superintendent when they don't do their job. Make them hold the superintendent accountable.
Yeah.
But then, Roberta, you know as well as I do, how many people go to school board meetings? Maybe 3. I mean, the worst thing, I think, and she says, because she's on a roll, they are elected to be stewards of taxpayer dollars, and paying $100,000 plus for someone who isn't doing their job, fire them. If I did my job like some of these supers do, I would have been fired a long time ago. Well, 100%. But again, how do you get them to do the job? I mean, we can't even elect good people to that position. It's just, they played the long game. We slept because we didn't want to look mean by fighting and nipping things while they were still in the bud. That's exactly what happened. Nobody wanted to stand up and push back. Nobody wanted to go, oh, well, I hate PC and that's stupid. And basically you're going to nail us into a corner if you, kind of do this. They didn't care about that. Rhonda says the school superintendent is who removed me from the agenda to speak during public comments, even though I had registered ahead by the deadline to speak. She'd not allow me to speak, trying to say that they already heard public comment on what I plan to talk about. Well, but here's the problem, Rhonda. I'm sorry to break this to you, but apparently you were just supposed to have the same opinion as everybody else who spoke. So maybe that's the problem. You're thinking you're an individual and you're really not. You're just part of the collective. It's so bad. I mean, who does that? Well, you can't speak because somebody else spoke on the topic. Well, what? You're going to have the same opinion? Because it's so dumb. It's so dumb. We had so many. I have like 9-starred comments that I didn't.
Well, I started a couple while you're gone, but I do want to make another comment. We talk a lot about free market, Jenny, and when it comes down to it, free market is really, I mean, it's so anti-government. It's so because government wants single payer everything. They want to have one entity that does your health, does your finance, does all of it. All of it comes to and from government. So when you look at free market, I mean, ultimately it comes down to a couple things. Free market is competition, and competition is work, and that's where the catch-22 is. Most people, they don't want to work. They don't want to put in the work because you have to work to educate yourself. You got to work to eat right, to eat good, to know how to do things, to farm, to grow your own food. You got to work to get ahead. You got to work to have your own business. I mean, you really have to work hard to be a participant in, what we call the free market. And most people, they don't want to do that. They just don't want to put in the work. They want to just watch their TV shows, go on social media, go out to eat at whatever restaurant, their experience is going to be tonight. And that's where the government takes advantage of everybody, because we don't have that work ethic anymore like we used to have. I mean, that's how I get ahead. I mean, and my kids know it. Like, they know that I have everything because I grew up as poor as you could possibly grow up. I have and do everything I do because I will outwork anybody. It doesn't matter what it is. I will outwork you. And that's how I win, because I won't stop. I will just keep going. And that's how a lot of, small town, farming type of people are. You're on mute.
No, I needed to be on mute because I was yelling to my son to see if he would take the dog out because the dog. Can you not hear her back there?
No. Well, I heard something,
Yeah,
but
yeah, she's back there screaming and carrying on like she wants to go out now. So,
but that's where all the crony capitalism comes in and all those things, because you have these huge corporations that will do the work for you. You know, they'll do all the work for you. All you got to do is check a box or say yes or go along with the program. You know, and free market is so far away from what we really have. I mean, it's disturbing. It really is.
well, and then people literally think corporatism is free market.
Yeah, it's not.
I mean, that's the crazy
it's control.
thing. Yeah.
Yeah.
And they don't even understand the difference between free market. Free market is absolutely no government intervention at all. That's free market. It's like you said, it's competition. It's I've got a better product than you. No, I've got a better product than you. No, I've got that's what it is. I mean, that's free market. But what we do now is corporatism.
Yeah.
Here in turbine people, we'll give you $1.5 million of our hard-earned tax dollars. We'll just get them right into the pot. We'll just get right into the pockets of our citizens and give those to you because we think you're worth that.
Well, and I want you to think about something else also. You know, we look at
12 people here.
Yeah.
Anyway, go ahead.
We look at our economy and we're so awesome, whatever. I want to ask you a couple questions, Jenny. Jenny, what do we produce? What do we produce that you would buy that another country would want to buy? Think about it. What do we actually produce that has value that somebody else wants? I mean, all we produce really in today's time is debt. We produce a massive amount of debt that we sell off to other people, but we're not the producers anymore. We're the consumers. And we base our entire economy on, how much stuff we buy. And it's total BS. We need to go back around to the production side. But there again, that takes free market. That takes a lot of work. And, are people going to want to do that?
Well, see, Roberta, again, people have to get fed up. These people are about to lose their family homes because they can't pay for all of these lawsuits are about to become educated real quick.
Yeah.
And Julia says, everyone plug into the Borg to have your best life ever. So the school superintendent is psychic now. Yes, I'm pretty sure they think so. And Andrew says the free markets operate on profit and loss and government has neither. And that's a really good point too, because if I have a better product. No, I do. Okay, well, if this guy does have a better product, you're losing business, right? So you either go out of business or you build a better product. That's how that works.
Well, and that's where
do that. Government just goes, you know what? Our budget's down. I'm going to tax you more. Here, give me your pocket. That's what they do.
Well, and that's where we've talked many times about where the government picks the winners and losers, because they'll subsidize somebody like wind or green, whatever, or, in no possible way would they be able to compete with the natural gas industry in producing energy. No possible way.
Julie says, Mom says everyone wants individual freedom, but you lose them on the personal responsibility part. But that's true. I mean, I want to be able to do what I want. And this goes back to something, because I'm going to go back to Andrew. I thought he said he was going to have to get off, but I saw him comment just a second ago. He said, here's the one I wanted to get to. The thing is, it's nearly a full ban. So he's talking about the wind turbine thing. So most properties are only a half a mile by half a mile of that, meaning that on my 160 acre farm, I could only have one at the very center of my farm, and that's all. And then it's not even worth it. Okay. And I understand what you're saying. Believe it or not, I totally get it. But here's the problem with property ownership. In this country, you have the right to do whatever you want on your property. I mean, you can run around naked on it. You could garden naked. I mean, you can do whatever you want to do. But there comes a point at which if you put up something that's toxic to me, like you dump human crap on your farm and it's next to me, that's not okay. It's not okay. What you're doing is affecting me. I can't live with the smell. It's polluting my groundwater. There are certain things that you can't do on your property because it affects your neighbor. Because I have just the same amount of right to in the enjoyment of my property as my neighbor does. And it's the same for me. If I dump human crap all over my place and they're like, but I can't stand it, Jenny, I can't smell anything, and you're polluting my groundwater. They have a point. So it's the same thing with windmills and solar farms and all of these other things. You put a windmill up on your property and it affects the noise affects me, the light flickering affects me, it falls over and it affects me.
Yeah.
I mean, all of those things, I'm sorry, but I agree, but I disagree. So I agree, gardening naked does not affect your neighbor. I mean, depending, but I mean, most likely. But putting up a wind turbine or dumping human crap on it does. So if it affects your neighbor, I'm sorry, but you don't have a right to affect my happiness and my right to happiness on my property. So that's my argument to you there. And something that, are we quickly moving toward a system that uses just one care provider? This goes back to the nurses things. Just give a few classes to nurses today, and down the line, shorten the degree for nurses to a year or two, leading to doctors who have a total of 3 to 4 years training. What Lisa is saying, I don't think people understand this, and I probably don't understand it very well myself because I'm not in healthcare, but I can tell you from the outside looking in and from somebody who's experienced a bunch of problems with the healthcare system myself. Here's the deal. When you do the same thing to doctors that you're doing to teachers, which is making it impossible for them to practice their craft like they paid the big bucks to do, then they get fed up and go, well, wait a minute, why am I paying all of this money back on a student loan and you're making me see 45 patients a day and I only have 2.5 seconds to talk to them and I can't really figure out, and I have to do this and I have to do this. We're putting so many parameters on everybody because we've lost our freedom. This is a totalitarian society basically anymore, run by corporations that we've allowed to run it because we give them tax breaks and we give them incentives and we bow to them and consider them the gods because they provide people jobs. That's exactly what's going on. I kid you not. And it's happening in every single sector. So when you go, I can't get my doctor's office where I go wouldn't even answer their phone for 3 days. Well, how do you get an appointment when they won't even answer the phone for 3 days? I mean,
well, and let me dovetail into that, Jenny, because that's the whole point of that system is to somewhat create crisis. So yes. Crisis is created. Your local doctor, he can't seem to do it himself. Now you got to have Big Brother come in. Now you got to have an overarching system that governs and regulates all of it because the little independent guy can't do it all by himself. So in my opinion, it's all created on purpose to create a crisis in healthcare or whatever. I mean, you could substitute any subject in there, but now the government has to come in and solve that because you can't get your doctor's office is so chaotic you can't even call and get an appointment on time. So it's all on purpose, in my opinion, designed by the government in collusion with the healthcare companies, the insurance companies, to get all, to ultimately move towards a single payer.
Okay, so now we've got an argument coming against my argument. So Andrew says, not even necessarily the market's big enough to accommodate Burger King and McDonald's, Ford and Chevy. With the government, it's one size fits all. Well, I agree with that.
Yeah.
I think maybe he was talking about Lisa's government swoops in and subsidizes the one who is failing. Just ask this ex-Solyndra wife. Remember, Lisa's husband worked for Solyndra. They moved from California. And Lisa says government will do all the work, but you lose all the choice, control, and freedom. And it takes several generations to realize this. By that time it's too late to walk it back. And she made another comment earlier I couldn't get on about the fact that what happens is all of this stuff happens so slowly. It's the whole frog in the boiling water kind of a thing. She was talking about, you bring it in from LA, you bring it in from New York, you bring it in from Oregon or whatever. And it's this whole indivisible thing that I refuse to say in the Pledge of Allegiance. next time I'm just going to go, we are indivisible during that whole part in the Pledge of Allegiance, just see what people do.
It's incrementalism. It's incrementalism. But I got to take a call real quick. I'll be back.
Well, you take a call because I got to argue with Andrew. Okay, so Andrew comes back and says, all right, hold on. Okay, if it does affect your property, then that is a property rights violation against you. I'm not sure that I understand that. Lisa said, I've had this argument, Jenny. The proponents of wind turbines keep telling me that they had the right to put them up no matter how I felt, making me look like a total whiny snowflake. Well, I mean, at some point, you're going to be able to get an attorney who is going to say, no, you don't have the right to affect this person's enjoyment of their own property. And then you won't be so much a snowflake, when you win in court, because you have a right to your property too. So I would be allowed, in your view, to erect a 200-foot tall cross on my property if it did not affect the person living next to you, meaning, I can't see how that would affect. Well, I mean, if it's 200 feet and it falls over on their property, or it could fall over on their property, then yeah, you can't do that. You can't. Now, if it's just, they're saying, oh, this puts some shade over my garden where I'm trying to grow. I mean, I think that's kind of a wimpy argument, but I don't know. I guess you could make that one. But I think the point that I'm trying to make about wind turbines is that's not and human poop, is there are literal health consequences to that are passed over, transferred onto the property owner next to you, and that's not right. They keep lowering the standards to fill in the gaps by those who left. If they would teach doctors about how to have healthy bodies, imagine that. But I do think that what you're saying, there's a lot of merit to that too, Julie, because I do think part of what we talked to Dr. Randy Grellner last week, and he said, we're like the only country that allows big pharma to come in and advertise on television, or advertise on the radio or whatever. So we're literally allowing pharmacological companies to direct to the consumer advertise, which then makes them go, oh, I wonder if my blood pressure is too high. I probably better ask my doctor about that. And I'm sure they do get great feedback from that, because I go into my doctor and I say, okay, so my blood pressure's high. So I saw this blood pressure medicine on the television when I was watching YouTube the other day, and so I think that might really work on me. And then the doctor, who should be saying, no, let's try some olive leaf, let's try some other things before we do that, is like, good, I'm getting a subsidy or a kickback or whatever from big pharma to sell this thing, so I'm going to put you on it. So yes, I completely agree with Julia there. Bad.
Well, and I want to say something on that.
Yes.
Something on that also.
Okay.
Well, hang on. I got to come back. I'll be back. Sorry.
You're cracking me up. Okay. Cast a shadow on their home. I'm assuming that you mean the cross, or are you talking about the windmill? And I don't know that a cross would be an eyesore, but possibly. I don't know. I mean, maybe. I don't know. So many doctors make money chopping people up and killing babies. I'm not sure why people think the medical system is good. And I'm not going to disagree. I think the medical system in overall needs to be just complete, but it's like the education system. What doesn't need to be just scrapped and start over? Yeah. I mean, at some point, when you keep adding on to a structure, it doesn't matter how much money that you pay your construction company. There are going to be leaks. There are going to be cracks. There are going to be, and you eventually get it built so high or so big, they end up just having to scrap it and start over. That's where we are with so many of these places and so many of these organizations, so many of these institutions, they all have the same problem right now. Andrew
Yeah,
says,
well,
please.
I wanted to real quick before you go on that. So you were talking about the pharmaceuticals, the direct advertising to consumer. I mean, I'm so against that 100%, but also, Jenny, the other check and balance on that, who makes up, 80, 50, 60, 70, 80% of the advertising budget in all these major media places? It's all pharmaceuticals. It's all big pharma. So now you have someone that they're never going to do an investigative report. They're never going to show all the bad things that happen because their biggest payday is Pfizer or, whoever, Merck or whoever. So that's the other side of that is you don't have that third party accountability with the free press or whoever, I say free press, with the press in general, with the press in general, because they're just paying, they're paying all that off.
Yeah. No, and that's another thing too. So Andrew says, please read this. It's like the anti-Semitism bill. I'm not anti-Semitic, not at all, but I want to protect free speech. I'm not at all for wind turbines, but I am for property rights. And I get that. I mean, I totally get that. Yeah, I'm not anti-Semitic either. I don't really care. I honestly don't care what you worship. I don't care who you love. I don't care anything about any of this stuff. I just don't want the government involved. There's no reason for the government to be involved with any of that. And again, if there's let's say a temple gets defaced, right? I said this, when I was talking to the senator. Let's say a temple gets defaced. Well, you call the police do an investigation, the police take care of the people who do that because there are laws against defacing property, right? You don't need to have something well, that was a hate crime.
Yeah.
What's a hate crime?
Yeah.
No, I'm serious. What is a hate crime?
Well, that's just that's a culture deal,
But it doesn't make any sense.
No, it doesn't.
It's completely meaningless, the term hate crime.
Yeah.
And the only people who use that stupid word are people who get their feelings hurt when the wind blows. And I'm sorry if you're offended by that. I don't really care. That just makes my point that you're offended by the fact that I would say that. It's just not okay. Lisa says, not sure eyesore would fly. Oh, this is another one. And the higher education also. And Cam's exactly right. Our higher education system is just crap. It's terrible. It's horrible. So much of this, all these things need to just be wrecked and rebuilt. Amen. And why is the government getting involved in 200-foot crosses, phallic structures, wind turbines? Well, and that's and that's a good question, but I will say this again. So if there is a wind turbine that's going up on my property or going up on my neighbor's property, and I have to be at all see any of that, the flicker from those, I am going to go ape crap crazy, and bad things may happen. That can make people crazy. So if I'm supposed to have my freedom protected and part of my freedom is the enjoyment of my own property, then there you have it. Like my neighbors put up a fence between our property, a great big 8-foot tall wooden fence, because our dogs do what dogs do, and they go back and forth, and they're very loud and annoying, and they didn't like it. And I get that. I don't like it either. But I don't care about the fence. I just don't care. It's like, whatever. But I can see somebody caring and going, well, now you've obstructed my view, and being, a big baby about it. Horseman 01 Bill says hate crimes are just sentence enhancements to add more time in corporate home prisons. Don't know who Horseman 01 Bill is, but I go with you. I'll go ding, ding, ding on that. Yeah.
Well, and just the culture that's created that, Jenny. It's the same thing. Why can guys go in girls' bathrooms, compete in their sports? We've covered it 100 different times, and it's just we've allowed those kind of anti-moral aspects, I think, as Christians, to just seep in, over time. We haven't stood up and said, hey, that's not right. We're not going to do that. And now look where we are. I mean, literally.
Well, because I think, and I think sometimes people get this idea of freedom and liberty that is everybody gets to do whatever they want to do, and that isn't freedom or liberty, because the trick with freedom and liberty, and that's probably not exactly the same word, there's probably a little bit of a difference there. The difference with that is that personal responsibility comes with having freedom. So I mean, I have the freedom to do whatever I want. But again, I'm going back to, I have the responsibility of making sure I'm not harming somebody else or, affecting their freedom. And that's the problem that, and Lisa makes a good point. Why isn't rape against a woman considered a hate crime against women? Where are the feminists on this one? But where are the feminists on everything, Lisa? Where are the feminists on everything? Where are the feminists on decrying men dressing up as girls and competing against them in a sport? Where are they?
Yeah. Do you think money dictates all those social movements in one way? I mean, was feminism literally just funded on purpose to, create, start a division, in your opinion?
That's a really interesting point. And for those of us who are like, I'm 62, and for those of us who grew up, I'm 62 and I was born in 1962. That's kind of interesting, huh? That's my year. Anyway, I never thought about that until just now. Anyway, the point is, I remember growing up with Helen Gurley Brown. And I mean, I actually knew who she was at probably 10, 11, 12. And we had all these commercials on television that were, woman power, woman power. There was an Angelique commercial. I brought this up like a number of times. I think it was 1970 something. I'm going to go 4 or 5. And it was a woman in a pantsuit singing, I can bring home the bacon, fry it up in a pan, and never let you forget you're a man. And then she's got a baby on one hip and she's doing this, but in her suit. And that was just literal propaganda to make women believe that what they had to do was be in the workforce, or we were absolutely nothing if we weren't in the workforce. And that's exactly what it was. And when you look at what Helen Gurley Brown proposed, and you look at Miss Magazine, and you look at all of these things that started, the women's empowerment, hate that word so much, movement, and you go back and you look at that, you'll see that it was absolutely, it's not nice to fool Mother Nature. Do you remember that commercial? It was a margarine commercial, and she would stand up and she said, it's not nice to fool Mother Nature. So many things. Yes, that was it, Lisa. Lisa and I are the same age.
But I mean, is it just to destroy the family?
Yeah.
I mean, is it just to destroy the family unit? I mean,
yes, it was.
In my opinion, that's what I feel like. I mean, to me, my very favorite picture of my wife of all time is just a picture my mom took. Lauren was standing in the backyard. She had, one kid on this arm. Yeah, there we go.
Cam, you're a lover, not a fighter. Okay, so it was a picture of Lauren.
Well, anyway, it's just a picture of Lauren. She's just standing in the backyard, looking out. She's got one kid in this arm and a kid on this hip. I mean, and to me, that's just the epitome of, she's a mother. She takes care of everything. I'm the guy out there sacrifice and do all the stuff so I can give all this stuff to her to be able to facilitate my whole family.
Well, so if you look at what Julia said, go back and watch the 70s shows. They're all about empowered women. It's not just the empowered women thing, Jules. I was watching something, a Love Boat. I was like, oh, I loved Love Boat. Look at Love Boat. Look at every freaking episode of Love Boat. It's always about somebody having sex with somebody else's wife or getting together with, and it's okay because you fell out of love with your wife. And It's like in Fantasy Island. Oh my gosh. All of these shows, they were the same thing. I grew up on them. And you look back now and you think, holy crap.
You're being programmed. You're being programmed.
But yes. And so you think now, and then we had No Fault Divorce, right? Right. And we had all of these programs. I remember watching, oh my gosh, this is not even a joke. You could probably go find this show. I was thinking when the kids were little, I was thinking Flipper, that'll be a great show for them to get to, we'll turn on Flipper. I found Flipper, reruns of Flipper on some channel. I mean, who doesn't love a dolphin, right? And the guy who's like helping the dolphin. One of the first shows I put on for the kids on Flipper was about how the guy, can't even remember his name. He was a warden, like a game warden or whatever, but on the ocean. And so he was like a law enforcement person. And somebody called him, there's an emergency on this boat. So he goes to this boat and he finds out that this woman has fallen off and drowned because she was drunk while she was entertaining her boyfriend, and her husband had to come clean it up on Flipper. And I was, what?
Little did you know.
I was like, well, snap, turn that off. We're not watching that. But you think about that. Now, seriously. So that was pretty much all of 70s programming was that stuff. So people who are my age, and what age group is it that has the highest divorce rate? My age group. I mean, come on. So they programmed us to believe that marriage was a big nothing. If you just don't feel like being in it anymore, go off on the love boat and screw whoever you want. I mean, they had that all down.
Yeah.
So we have years and decades of programming that started even at oh my goodness, think about even in the 50s. I'm not a doctor, but I play one on TV and I love Pall Mall menthols. They're great. Right? Hold on a second.
That's Edward Bernays propaganda. And you know what? Speaking of the 50s, Jenny, I've looked into this pretty extensively. You know who was the
Look at what Julie says. Hold on one second. Even on the Andy Griffith show, they're all single except for the couple who fought all the time. Okay, so go ahead. Back in the 50s.
Well, anyway, back in the 50s, you know who was the single strongest family unit, like just culturally in this country?
The Black family.
The Black family was the absolute single strongest, most responsible, Christian-backed, most conservative family unit. Look what the government did to Black families, and to me, is all done on purpose. They purposefully went in there, destroyed those families with drugs, culture, subsidization, all of it. That was done on purpose, in my opinion.
Yeah. And that was part of my reasoning for how they wanted to ban To Kill a Mockingbird. Remember, they wanted to ban
they did in Edmond for a while.
Yeah, because it had the N word in it. No. You know why they wanted to ban that book? Because it shows the Black family is being solid as a rock, and them going to church and all of this other stuff, and them coming to help, and how the community helped each other. It didn't matter if you're really white or Black. There were cultural differences, but everybody, loved one another. Their housekeeper was a Black woman who brought up Scout like she was her own child. Yeah. So I mean,
and it was anti like educate like Department of Education.
It was very anti-public education, where Scout basically says at one point, she hated her new teacher who came in from New York, and she had these nails, and all she wanted them to do was group projects, and she couldn't read anymore, like Atticus used to read to her. I was like, people, you need to read some of these books, because they don't want, it doesn't have anything to do with the N word. It has to do with cultural responsibility and showing the way culture used to be. And they don't want you to know how.
And they've weaponized culture. They've literally weaponized culture against everybody, whether whether you're black, Hispanic, Italian, it doesn't matter. They've weaponized the culture. And now look how divided we are. We're so divided. We're so much more divided than ever.
Well, look at what Cam says. I'll be honest, chivalry among my generation and the younger generations is rare to find. I agree with Michael. The destruction of families is a ripple effect. And now we have people who have the highest levels of mental health and suicide rate in human history. It's so true. Cam is like spot on.
Yeah. Well, and
people don't put these things together.
Yeah. Well, and to put another thing on top of that, Jenny, look at the amount of, two or three different things. Look at the amount of chemicals that people are subjected to now, not just through the food supply and the water supply, but you've got all these over-the-counter drugs, all the prescription medications, all the vaccines that are we're just under chemical attack. And then on top of that, for the first time ever, look at the electromagnetic, the amount of electromagnetic radiation that's in the air from satellites, from cell phones, from Wi-Fi. I mean, everywhere you go, you're just inundated with magnetism, and those things affect not your physical body, but the chemicals that are in your body. Those are affected by that electromagnetism.
Oh, so many things are. Lisa says, if we don't hear the N-word, how will we know what it meant, who used it in the history, etc.? Well, that's a really good point, because again, one of the things that I did, because even though my mom was an English teacher and an English literature teacher, and I knew all of the things, I never really, it was weird. In middle school, I read a lot. Like I read the whole C.S. Lewis series on The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe. I read T.S. White's book about King Arthur, which was great. I read that whole series. It was amazing. And he was an amazing person. And Sword in the Stone, I think, is for people that don't know the whole series, but that one. And I read the Iliad and the Odyssey. And that was all when I was in middle school, but that's all I read. Once I got into high school, I was too cool for everything except all of the things I shouldn't be doing. So I never read. So I took the time. I started, I guess, 4 years ago, I started reading all of the classics. And if you go back and you read all of the classics, like, I'm going to lose all of my author names because I'm putting myself on the spot. But if you go back and you read the old authors and you read what they wrote, your education goes through the roof, because you learn, and all of a sudden you start putting parallels together about what's going on now because of what happened then. And I think that's part of the reason why in public schools, they don't want you to read classic literature. Yeah. We have to read all this new crap about, gay sex and, all of this crazy stuff. We have to do that, because they're doing to kids what they did to my generation with all of the love boat, screw whoever you want kind of stuff. That's what they're doing to the younger kids, because they don't want them to read classic literature, because if they read classic literature, then they'd find out that what we're doing right now sucks and is bad.
Well,
and that's not the way we've always done it.
Well, and also, Jenny, you read that more classical type of literature, you're getting much more advanced sentence structure, syntax, vocabulary. There's so much more content and kind of composition to those than one of these books that don't even have punctuation.
That have a Lexile score of 3rd grade, but but you're reading it in high school. Yes, it's terrible, and people don't even understand. The more you have to struggle to read something, you may go, oh, but it's, you may have to struggle with it. But you know what? It makes your brain work, and your brain, and I always told my kids this, and this used to make them so mad, and it made me want to do it even more. I would go, what's this for? Social media. No, what is this really for? It's for when you're reading a book, you go, oh, I don't know what that word means. What is that word? Oh, I would prefer them to use a dictionary. But my point was, if you've got the thing in your hand, use it for good. Don't use it for evil.
Yeah. You know what? One of my presents in high school that my mom got me for my birthday, because I told you we didn't have a lot of money, but she got me like 3 presents that I still have to this day. It's funny.
Oh.
She got me a dictionary, she got me a thesaurus, and then she got me another kind of like medical, like natural cures kind of
That's
medical deal.
Wow, when you graduated from high school?
Yeah.
Interesting. My mom wouldn't have thought about the last one, but she always had, I think I have the original family dictionary over there. It's this thick. I'm not kidding. This thick, maybe. And it's like this wide. You could use it as a doorstop. But it was great. And it has so many words in it we don't even use today because we don't know them. We're so, what is the name of that show? It's the movie, Judge did it. Mike Judge did it. Idiocracy. We're so idiocracy, I mean, it's just, we don't even recognize how bad we are because we're too stupid to know how stupid we are. It's bad. Okay, Andrew says one thing and then we probably better sign off for the day. It's the whole idea of STEM again. I'm not against STEM, but the whole point is to turn out employees and obedient subjects.
Yeah.
Dare we not learn
100%.
history, economics, philosophy, or read the classics, many of which are highly philosophical. Andrew, I could not agree with you more. There's just there's not a more word that I could use to agree with you because I hate that whole STEM thing. It's stupid. And do you know how they learn science? Even the people who like Louis Pasteur, you know how they learn science? They were taught from other people and they learned it from books. I mean, it's just so dumb. Oh, thank you, Cam. You two are awesome. Keep up the good work. Well, we'll do our best. But for now, it's time to get off because we're almost at 2 hours and Julie was making fun of us earlier. Remember when she said just an hour? Because our interview with the senator was just an hour. But we can take it and multiply it, can't we? Pretty easily. But I think these are good conversations to have. Oh, yeah. Thank you. And Andrew says, great show. Well, thank you for your input, Andrew. It was very great. And that's again, I'll say it again, because I always say it. Our audience makes the show because they have so many good points. I mean, I just love our audience. They're phenomenal. And if it weren't for you, I probably wouldn't do it because I get tired of it. So, all right. Watch what's going on in the House and the Senate. We've got today and tomorrow left to go. And if you haven't made it to the Capitol today and you want to, wear red and go. And I'm sure Sonda will find you and put you to work. So do that. And guys, pay attention. This is okay. I don't want to talk anymore now. I'm done now. Anything else, Michael?
That's it. Personal responsibility. It's up to us. It's up to us.
Oh, wait, hold on. Julie says, at our house, we'd have to wait until mom could go to the college library to look up some of our words in the gigantic dictionary. Scrabble was serious business. That's so funny because one of the funniest things I ever remember doing with my mom was mom and Gwen and I played bananagrams, which is like Scrabble. We played bananagrams. And my sister and I had some wine, and Betty never lets me forget about that game because we were trying so hard to get our mom because she was like, Miss Word. You could never hit her with a word she didn't know. And she was always hitting you with a word you didn't know. And we were having so much fun with that game. And Gwen and I were having a little more fun than we probably should have. Okay, on Friday, we have Julianne Romanello, our friend, who's going to come on and talk about real and biometric ID. I'm hoping to have a little more learned before then. I've got, Congressman Josh Burkeen is now the chairman of the Homeland Security Committee. We should be extremely happy about that. And I've been in contact with somebody in his office, and I'm trying to work on getting somebody at Homeland Security to talk about the real ID because to me, that's a big no-no that's got to go away under the Trump administration, and quickly, because it's just tracking and bad news. So Julianne's going to be on with us on Friday to talk about that at 9. And then at 1 o'clock, we're going to have a special with Amy Serrato of and our friend Whitney Malika from Pike Off OTA. If you haven't been paying attention, OTA has now decided that they're going to change the route that they were trying to get in Norman. And they are now going to change that, which means that now new homeowners are up for having their land disposed of through eminent domain to put in a stupid driveway, essentially. So they're going to be on to talk about that and what kind of legislation is getting through to curtail OTA at the Capitol this year. So hopefully we'll have some good news there. I'm praying and crossing my fingers. So we'll hear from her at 1 o'clock. So we've got 2 on Friday. We're done for today, but thank you for joining us, and thank you for being with us as usual. We so appreciate you very much, and we will see you again on Friday. Have a great day.